meal, that is the producers groups, where we have posho meal and peanut butter. We organize them also in VSLA.
I think we have a bit of a technological issue. It's not working.
Each group is organized with 30 members, where we register 30 members and support them. The IFAD support, one of the support was establishment of demonstration plots, where we train the groups. We train the groups so that they take the knowledge from the demonstration plots and take them to their own farm to increase the high yield productivity. In the fishing group, we get experts from Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security and Ministry of Forestry to come and train our groups. The groups are there. This was the visit by Minister of Agriculture in one of the groups. We have 12 producers groups in 3 counties of South Sudan. That is Bor, Torit, and Juba. We also have processors group where we have thrashers and butter mill. This is the product of one of my groups. This one, you can have a taste later after the session. We produce it. The women group, 30 in the group, 20 members, 20 female and 10 male. We also have a mill machine where we train them on operation and maintenance. One of the case study we will find there, I know time is not on our side, I will just run through it. One of the case study we took from all the groups, the 30 groups, is that thresher mill. You push. This one is Kelan Najur Production Group. Kelan Najur means the beauty of a country, a beauty of a country in Bari language. It's one of the tribes in South Sudan. We have 64 tribes in South Sudan. Kelan Najur Group, the situation before IFAD funded project, Kelan Najur members could move 30 kilometers away from Juba town to bring their granuts, to bring their posho, their sagam, and maize for grinding in Juba town, which is 40 kilometers. And the transport is 70,000, which is $7. The transport, that is coming to Juba. Going back also is $7. That is 7,000 SSP, South Sudanese pound. When the group was supported with the mail, the group, when we have reduced the transport cost, the group could not now move to town because they are already having the thresher. The thresher also provides them, when you cultivate in the rural area, the farmers are able to bring their groundnuts, their maize, their sorghum to thrash. The women could not sit down for a whole day to clean the sorghum or the maize. The posho mill has also helped them. The case study Mufrasha. We have also introduced the VSLA, where the question will come later. How do you cope in a fragility? The posho mill and the VSLA, the group are doing the saving, self-saving, where the share is 1,000, that is $1. That is $1 and 1,000 SSP. We support them so that they can generate some incomes. They don't rely only on agriculture. They don't rely only on fishing. They rely also on VSLA, where they are able to get money and take loan from the VSLA group, that is Village Saving and Loan Association, to go open their small businesses to support their family and be able to refund the money back to the group. This is just a profile selected from the farmers. That is a VSLA group, one of a woman, called Sylvia Kaku, who benefited from this project and benefited also from the group. Back in my culture, during the marriage ceremony, there is what is called introduction letter. Introduction letter is given and you put 800,000 in the envelope with the letter, introducing to the family that we need to marry your daughter. Sylvia Kaku is the woman who is married to an old man, and the old man is not working. She's only the breadwinner in the house. She came to the group, she's a member of the group, asking the group for the support, and the group granted from the saving they get from the posho mill, and then the saving they got from VSLA. Charles also sent a child to school, and the school is demanding Charles with 150,000 SSP. That is 150 USD dollars. Charles came to the group for the support, and Charles was supported. This is through the support of IFAD that was brought in 2020 to 2022. Actually, to be precise, this project ended in 2021 with a no-cost extension in 2022 of 6 months. The project has ended now, but the group is still surviving because we have trained them, we have empowered them. They are able now to produce even without the support. Maybe the few challenges is frequent communal conflict in Torit County and then part of Bor and Juba. You know South Sudan, the story of South Sudan. We are the youngest country in the world and in Africa. We are not that stabilized yet, but still that cannot stop us also from doing our work. We are able to use the trained extension agents to reach out to some of the groups where we are not able to reach the groups. The extension agents could reach out to support. With also patrolling from the government, we are able to go through Payams and the bombers, where we can get the authorities to help us for free movement. Lack of transport to take the produce to the market. The group, though they are requesting, they are already having money from the saving, but they are requesting maybe if they can get a little support to top up from what they have for transport tricycle. Maybe the question later? It's cut here.
Yeah, I think we just give Assunta the opportunity to also answer how you've dealt with fragility during your work. You've mentioned it slightly when we were talking about the challenges.
Yes.
If we can go to 2 slides before this one.
My question is, how does the organization support better incomes and resilience of its members? That is one question alone. How does the organization cope with fragility? One is income strengthening and resilience of its members. This is through well-organized CIGs groups, that is common interest group. We organize the group in what they want, and then we start supporting them. The second one is diversification of the livelihood. We don't allow our group to depend only on one enterprises. For example, the vegetable group. This year in South Sudan, we don't have rain. It is not there completely. But now for the vegetable group, how will they survive? They have VSLA, and then also they are trained on the irrigation. Most of my groups, they are located nearby rivers. So we encourage them to start planting nearby river and then do the irrigation. They use watering cans and then jerry cans. They call it nyekese from there. We also improve access to information for better planning through the extension agents, through the trained extension agents. We also do the better linkages. Better linkages, I am meaning, in the market, I was taking example of coronavirus with the restriction in 2020, 2021. We're able to connect our groups to the market. Instead of fishing group traveling 40 kilometers, they call the hotels and the restaurants to come and pick the fish. Because one, we have also provided them, the fishing group, with the solar fridges where they catch the fish and store in the solar fridges and connect them with the market. The business people come from town and pick the fish at affordable price. Maybe cope with the fragility. We have a well-defined pathways where we use the telephone and then provision of personal protection equipments, and then do the 5. The project, the title was Do the 5. That is the do not shake the hand, cover your mouth, and all this. And then the mobile phones also help us during the insecurity. For example, one of the payams in Juba called Kondokoro, I remember on 4th October, we were supposed to do the field visit to Kondokoro, and there was insecurity. So there was insecurity. One of the extension agents called me and said, do not come to this site because there is insecurity. So we use that one to better our group. The other one is women. We invest in women. Women are investing more in small livestock. In my country, women, the ownership, they don't own livestock like cows, and then the ownership of land, they don't own big land. They only do the kitchen gardening around the area where they are staying, so that they just cultivate vegetables for sale and then for consumption. And then the better linkages. Example is Smart Seed in Juba is one of the company. We have linked our groups, all the vegetable groups, with Smart Seed, so that they give them the durable, the drought tolerance seeds. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Assunta, and it's good to see so much work being done in the youngest nation in the world, and also coping with a lot of the unrest that is happening also in South Sudan by building very strong community cadre and community organizations. I would now like to go to our third speaker, Dr. Riyad bin Masoud. Riyad is the lead coordinator at the Transition States Coordination Office of the African Development Bank. His office oversees the operationalization of the African Development Bank's strategic and operational approach to addressing fragility and building resilience in Africa. Riyad has been with the group of the African Development Bank since 2008. He has previously worked in the bank's Resource Mobilization and Partnership Department, as well as in the Research and Private Sector Operations Departments. Prior to joining the bank, he was an assistant professor in the area of knowledge management at Université Carthage in Tunisia. Riyad holds a PhD in business intelligence and a master degree in knowledge management from Université Lumière in Lyon, France. He's also an engineer in statistics and data analysis and graduated from the University of Manouba in Tunisia. And Riyad is from Tunisia. Riyad, the question to you is, with regards to the work that you do in the African Development Bank, you have developed a tool called the Country Resilience and Fragility Assessment. Perhaps you can tell us how AFDB is using this tool strategically to inform its programs in the various member countries. Over to you, Riyad.
Yes, thank you so much, Rasha, for this introduction. First of all, I really feel myself privileged since I'm sitting here between the IFAD and its clients. And I hope this and my intervention will provide the expected value addition. On behalf of the African Development Bank, very happy and thankful for you, colleagues, for inviting us to this discussion. First of all, you know, what we should know, the African Development Bank indeed has been engaged in the aspects of fragility and resilience since long time. You know, this is an institution that is sitting in Africa. This is an African institution, and we believe, you know, we have the responsibility as an African institution to remain engaged with our countries and our communities that are facing these aspects and these manifestations of fragility and conflict. And as I said, 2 decades of engagement means also a lot of lessons learned and a huge body of experience that we have learned. And as you asked about the analytical tools, the CRFA, let me very quickly tell you about the CRFA. The CRFA is not the, is the tool that the bank has introduced since 2018. But before this, it really created a huge innovation, actually, and a paradigm shift in our way of perceiving and analyzing, the drivers of fragility and shaping our engagement. But before that, since 2014, and speaking of innovation, the bank was one of the very first multilateral institutions that introduced the concept of fragility assessment as a whole. So, and I think the CRFA in 2018 came up with that innovation that helped it more, the bank, to be more efficient and more effective in terms of understanding and quantifying the drivers of the fragility. And the innovation here is that we no longer see fragility only from the fragility perspective or the lack of capacity perspective, but we see it also from the capacity and pressure perspective, and we see it from a positive side. We need to, after fragility, there's also there's also a way to build resilience. So within that perspective, we quantify throughout 7 dimensions. These dimensions entails the political inclusiveness, it entails security aspects, justice, socioeconomic inclusion. It entails also social cohesion, because we know that social cohesion is one of the ingredients to build, resilience at national and regional level. We look at these drivers of fragility from a data-driven perspective, from the externalities and regional spillover, because most of the fragility drivers have that spillover effect, that spillover regions and countries. We look at it from the perspective of climate change and the environmental impact. So all this tool, we roll it we roll it every year for all countries. So that provides us a perspective, for all 54 countries, and that helps us a lot in our engagement. So in that way, that you can quantify areas where you have high pressure and low capacity, and this is how we engage strategically in our dialogue with countries. So for instance, in the case of, I'll just give some few examples, but I think the most relevant one is the one that we did in Mali. So the CRFA will tell you that in Mali you have a strong connection and a strong correlation between 3 factors: youth unemployment, environmental degradation, and extreme poverty. So this is a disaster triangle, and you cannot do business as usual. You cannot pretend that everything is fine and you roll out operations and you do the usual business. So we need to be extremely innovative. We need to look at it very seriously and to come up with strategically with a selective approach. So in the context of Mali, we decided to go with one single priority area, which is fully focused on enhancing and strengthening, the value chains in the agriculture system, especially in rural areas. So that was, the whole portfolio was dedicated to that. And what we did also in Mali, and that has been informed, by the CRFA, but also the CRFA is not enough. You need to also to conduct some, political analysis economy, and you do a lot of economic sectoral work so that these will be informed thoroughly. So what we have also decided is to intentionally and deliberately increase our intervention in conflict-affected areas in Mali. And we bring 50% of our portfolio in the northern side of Mali and the central side of Mali, where the most vulnerable communities are sitting. We have also deliberately made the choice to deploy geolocation and monitoring of results tools. And this is, a way for us to innovate and to making sure that, our operations are effective. So, of course, during the preparation, the appraisal, and the design of the project, we made sure that local communities are engaged and they are consulted. We need to give them a stake and making sure that wherever we intervene, whatever area we intervene and how we do it, they will tell you how you shape, the project and how you make sure that you are not doing harm, you are doing good. So, and there's also a stronger, focus on integrated projects. I'll come back to some other aspects later on the project, but also, there is a huge demand from the youth population to increase the bank and other partners' engagement in private sector. We need to do something in catalyzing private sector investments and giving the opportunity also to these young people to flourish their business, and like the one that we've been hearing from Assunta and Simon. So these are considerations that we really take on board very seriously, and these are informed by the analytics that we do.
It's really very heartening to see the African Development Bank investing so much in agriculture and also stepping up on conflict areas. Riyad, thank you very much, and I'll pass to Bernard. Bernard Yen, our fourth panelist, is IFAD's Regional Director for West and Central Africa. He joined IFAD in 2011 and served in various capacities at headquarters as well as in the field. And prior to joining IFAD, he worked with UNDP as team leader for poverty reduction and environment. Bernard holds the Food Development Engineering degree from the Polytechnic University of Bobo in Burkina Faso. He also holds the Master of Science in Natural Resources Management from South Dakota State University, where he also served as PhD research associate. Bernard is from Burkina Faso. Bernard, the question to you is, IFAD is committed to working in tripartite context and collaborating with the private sector. I think we also heard African Development, how they're really stressing on that point. IFAD is also taking it up. What are the specific measures IFAD is promoting to ensure that its target groups can engage with the private sector in tripartite context? Over to you.
Thank you, Rasha. And allow me to start by actually congratulating you and the team for putting together this session. Actually, I believe that this room, we should have been missing seat in this room, because the topic we are talking about, fragility, resilience, is so important. If you look at the context in which we are implementing our project, is so important that we need to give all the attention to this topic. The effectiveness, the transformation of the food system we are talking about, it will not happen if you do not really understand the drivers of fragility and if you are not properly addressing them in our operations. So I really appreciate this session, congratulate them, and thank you to the colleague panelists, for being here. From my hand, from your question, I can take it I can cover it from 3 points. The first one is IFAD working in fragile situations. The second one is IFAD engaging with the private sector. And perhaps the third one is the tools we are using, to engage with the private sector in fragile context. Regarding the first one, IFAD actually, since its creation, its establishment 46 years ago, actually were created in response to a crisis situation, the food crisis of the 1970s, which means that the colleague of the ADB was saying this actually from many years, they have been dealing with fragility. You can see that fragility, we are dealing with it, it's been 4 decades now. So this is important. And if we are dealing with fragility 46 years ago, we can see that the situation is worsening. The drivers are, becoming very serious. Hence, there is really need for us to enhance or to increase our support for addressing the root causes of fragility. Private sector for us is also very important because it's actually a way to create employment in rural areas. Our engagement with the private sector allow our beneficiary to access market, and also our beneficiaries can access technologies, all the innovation around. So this is also very important to us. Now, from a policy and a strategic perspective, our intervention when we are talking about fragility is basically framed, guided, by three things. The first one is a strategy for engaging in countries with fragile situation. Under this strategy, we basically define what we understand in IFAD by fragility in terms of high vulnerability to all the shocks, whether natural or man-made shock. And of course, in association with all the other drivers that my colleague here mentioned, for example, the weak capacities, the weak enabling environment, the climate issues, the policies, the institutional capacity. So all those things, we take them into account in this definition. The second framework that guides our work in fragile situations is a special program for countries, with fragile situation. And under this program, we determine how we have to work, what are the entry points. And whenever we are starting, preparing, or implementing an operation in a country, in a fragile context, we make sure that these 4 entry points are properly covered. The first one is gender. The second one is how we strengthen actually the local institutions. The third one is how we improve food security. And the fourth one is how we address the effect of climate change, and also how we improve the adaptation to climate change, and also how we optimize the management of natural resources. So these are our 4 entry points. The colleague mentioned something very interesting, and that's my learning of the day. I did not know about your tool that you are calling CFA. I really appreciate this. Even on the panel we learn, So I really appreciate this, and note that we are also doing what we call, we use a fragility lens to assess the situation, to understand what is going on before actually proposing the response. I see that this tool is also used in ADB, and they are even much more perhaps advanced than us, and this is definitely something on which I'm going to learn later on. So basically, this is the framework for fragility, our work in fragile situation. Now, when it's come to private sector, our engagement with private sector, we also have here a strategy for engaging with private sector, and basically, we are pursuing 2 objectives. The first, we try to mobilize funding and investment in SMEs, and the second, we try to make sure that we are expanding the market, for our beneficiaries. These are the 2 we are actually targeting, and of course, all that go with market in terms of jobs, in terms of income. Now, from this strategy, we came up with a private sector financing program. And the private sector financing program give us all the tools we actually use, all the instruments we actually use, whenever we are engaging with the private sector. And the first one is what we call direct financing of private entities. Very recently, until recently, in 2019, we did not have, these tools, in IFAD. So we had to actually even change the agreement establishing IFAD to allow us to be financing directly the private sector, because the financing was going directly to governments or as grant to civil societies, organizations, and so on. So this was an innovation that was introduced since 2019. And basically what we do, we provide also to private entity loans. We try to manage risks with actually guarantee funds. We also try to provide to do equity investment. So these are, the tool we are using to engage with the private sector at this level. But it's not just the direct financing. From the loan we provide to member states, there are also, opportunities for the private sector to engage under this project that are implementing by lead agencies in government. So there are also opportunities there. And basically, we set to ourselves a target of saying we will make sure that 25% of the financing IFAD is providing to its member state, we will make sure that between the period 2022 and 2024, 25% of it goes to fragile context. And at midway, we realized that we have now realized 35% of the financing between those 3 years that are being allocated to fragile context. So this is, an evidence of our commitment, to actually work with fragile situation, help address the root causes of fragility. And beside those two, we also have what we call special initiative. The panelists from Sudan presented the Rural Poor Stimulus Facility, which we call special initiative in IFAD. With grant resources, we are able to provide, these resources to address specific situation or mitigate a specific impact. So this is what I would say quickly in terms of our engagement with fragile situation, and to end by saying there is one approach in all this work. The approach is to do no harm. So whatever we are doing in fragile situation, we make sure that with a robust assessment, the use of safeguard, we make sure that whatever intervention is being implemented, we do no harm. So this is our approach.
Thank you very much, Bernard. And because we've reached our 40 minutes for the presentations, I think I'm going to open the floor for questions from our audience, and welcome all our guests today. I understand we have representatives from our development partners. We also have representatives from the State Parliament for Tanzania. So thank you very much for joining us today. So
Mr. Moderator, if you don't mind, with the permission of your audience and your own permission, she announced in the beginning that I need to join a board meeting. So I'm very sorry.
So I don't know if there are any quick questions to you, Bernard, before you leave. Otherwise, the rest of us will take it. Okay. I think we will cover for you. Right. Any questions from the floor? Any clarifications you would like to seek? Yes, please. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you. My name is Dorothea. I'm from Tanzania, currently working with a startup known as Kenaldo Company Limited. We are farmers. We are also connecting other farmers to the market. A point of clarification. Women and youth are mostly affected by whatever negative thing that will occur. Whatever it is, the majority that suffers are women and youth. And unfortunately, they are not connected to financial institutions. When I say they're not connected, majority of the African countries, women do not own land, which is the major collateral when they go for the loans. And they don't have, it's not that they don't have per se, but most of their economic activities are not centralized, so they normally miss out. The funds are there, but they cannot access them. What can we do to clarify this?
Thank you very much. So I think I'll give it to you. Would you like to answer that? And then Assunta also to share your village.
The question is about connectivity to financial markets. I'll give an example. The example, it links to the issue of connectivity from the infrastructure perspective, but the same example apply also in the financial, just imagine a transmission line of an electric transmission line from two urban areas. We in MDBs and multilateral financier, we do a lot of these type of investments. But most of the time, you will connect two urban areas with this transmission line, and then in between, you have rural areas and villages and communities sitting. You are lightening, the two urban areas, but in between, people will see the line of transmission. They see the lights in the cables, but by night, they are in the dark. That's exactly, the type of investment that we should avoid. Because the intent is good. The intent is to do good. But by the end of the day, at the implementation stage, you realize that you are not doing good, you are doing harm. You are increasing the sentiment of marginalization. And you are creating also the condition that will undermine the social cohesion of the nation. That's exactly also that example speaks to the example they're providing. Yes, indeed, women and youth are the most vulnerable. And we need to do something when it comes to connecting them to the market, to the financial market. That's why we think that our approach, of course, we need to remain engaged, but also we need to look at these specific interventions from a holistic approach. We should no longer see it from, an investment for, for growth development at the broader terms, but we need really to look at these nuances. This is why in our projects in the African Development Bank, and we call for the support of all our partners, because there are areas that we can do, there are others that we cannot do. This is why we believe the whole community, the HDP community, humanitarian development and security, and peace-building communities, actors, all of them should work together in order to provide, these responses at the community level. The issue is that you raised the issue of the land issue and the property of land issue. And this is something that we need to work with government and push for policy reforms and push for, strengthening the institutional capacities in order to make sure that these issues are addressed. But in the meantime, we need to do something. We need to provide, tailored response that are sensitive to these aspects. I hope that responds to your question to some extent.
Thank you. That's a good question. I think we're experiencing this one all in Africa, the women ownership plan. I thought it's only in my country, but I think it's in general in Africa. I talked about the livestock in my presentation. There, like cows, women don't own cows in my country. They only own the small livestock, chicken, goats. But still, one thing we should know, when solving gender issue, I know some people think when we talk about gender, we are talking about women. We are not talking about women. You cannot solve women issue without men. We bring them closer. Even this VSLA, back the rural people think that this VSLA group is only for women. But no, it's not for women. Even if it is for women, you call them together, they do the saving, they take loans, they go open their small businesses. When you come home with your money as a woman, man takes it. A man takes your money and divide it. You remain with this one and remain with that one. So it is good we bring these men in, even in VSLA. Though they think that VSL is only for women, it's not for women, it's also for men. You bring them closer and then explain to them how we are supposed to work together. What I always tell them is that one hand cannot clap, but if we put two hands together, you will hear the sound, right? So this one is a hand for man, this one is a hand for woman. We put the hands together, and then we will go on. The other thing is about this home gardening. Home gardening, though we don't own land, like in South Sudan, if you are not married like me, I have 3 brothers. My brothers, they own cows. Me, I don't have even a single cow. And I am working. If I buy a cow now, they will take it that they are going to marry with it. The land, my brothers, they all own land. But me, I don't even have a single land. But in my mother's house, at the backyard, I have vegetables, sukuma wiki. I am cultivating sukuma wiki. If my mother is cooking that sukuma wiki, she will ask my brothers, How is it tasting? They said, it is nice. Where do you think we got this one? He said, it's from Asunta's garden. He said, is it bad or good now? They said, it is good. He said, you see, this is how you are supposed to help your sisters, because you are supposed to bring them up. You don't leave them alone like that. So men and women, let's come together, and then we go on. If you are solving women problem, bring them in. Bring these men in. You solve it together.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Assunta? Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, panelists. My name is Don, represent the government of Burundi. And I have a very specific question to the representative of the AFDB regarding the CRFA tool. I've read an amazing report about it. Congratulations. My question is about the importance of data, like the agribusiness sector, also national agricultural development. And the tool is based on data collection, data analysis, mainly done by the AFDB. And my question is, how much do you engage local governments? And by engagement, I'm meaning ownership of the results from the tool, but also capacity building of local representatives so that they can even undertake the same analysis without AFDB's support. And my second question is, we've seen that various international organizations are developing this type of tools, whether it's resilience, fragility. How much coordination is currently ongoing? Because we've seen that sometimes it creates even discrepancies and also creates new gaps in development, in developing countries. So how much engaging other organizations to make sure that it doesn't create bigger problems than they already exist? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Don. Any other questions from the floor?
My name is Emeka Njoku. I'm actually from the oil and gas industry. I run a drilling service company. But I'm also doing some investment in agriculture. We're putting a factory to process food. Now, I don't know, I might sound naive or so, and I'm not sure who exactly I should be addressing this question to. But it always baffles me. In Africa, we have a lot of problems that are not unique to Africa. We have mines. Mines are built. The extractive industry is able to take out all that needs to be taken out to where it's needed for processing, copper, gold, everything. If we need bridges in Africa, bridges are built to the same standards as anywhere else in the world. Now, when it comes to agriculture, agriculture is as old as man. There is nothing new we're inventing in Africa, where it's the same practices, the same maize you're growing in the US, it's the same maize you're growing in China, and it's the same maize you're trying to grow in Africa. Why is it a problem? You have all the technical support from all sorts of organizations. You have the institutional financing all over the place. So I'm struggling with what the gap is. Why is it treated almost like a hobby? We're having cultural issues. If we're trying to extract oil, we don't have cultural issues. We don't decide whether men own land or women don't own land. There's a decisive problem. The problem is properly dimensioned, and how it's supposed to be handled is well defined.
Thank you. Yeah, Ian?
And first of all, thank you to IFAD for organizing this really important session, I think, and thank you for the panelists for sharing their insights. My name is Ian Wright. I'm from ILRI, International Livestock Research Institute. If you look at the parts of Africa we're discussing where we're dealing with fragile areas, conflict, youth unemployment, increasing challenge of climate change, across the Sahel, Horn of Africa, livestock are critically important to those systems. fragile areas, livestock are part of the systems. But historically, organizations like our research institutions and organizations have not worked so much in those areas. All you partners, we're working with IFAD, we're working with VSF Germany, we're working with the African Development Bank, we're working with the private sector, but not so much in these fragile environments. And I think we need to start working much more intensively in those areas, because those are where the real challenges that we have, challenges of climate change, of food insecurity, of gender issues, of youth unemployment, and so on. So my question is, how can we leverage more resources into those areas? The lack of resources in these fragile areas has been mentioned. And how can we leverage the capacity of organizations like mine, research organizations, to work much more closely with development partners, to take what we've learned in research, perhaps adapt it to these, actually conduct more research in those areas to inform programs of IFAD, of the African Development Bank, of the development community, the NGOs like VSF. So more resources, and how can we leverage more resources and build that partnership between research and development in these fragile areas?
Thank you very much, Ian. All right, so I'm going to take...
Thank you. Okay, my name is Araf Ahmad Bakari. I'm from Zanzibar. I'm a founder and managing director from Kilmoha Input Company Limited, dealing with making an organic fertilizer and produce a vegetable. I have a question regarding to our first speaker, Mr. Inaji from Somalia. How we can get a solar dryer, solar fridge, and solar pipeline? Because in Zanzibar we produce a lot of fruit, but it decay, and a lot of farmers produce it, and they can never sell a lot of, so we needed to freeze it, we need to store it, but how we can get those solar dryer? Maybe you can teach us how to get it, or maybe you can tell me the price so we can buy it. Thank you so much.
So you're creating new business for Simon and his team. So I think, Simon, we'll go first for you to respond to the question.
Okay. Are you asking about the technical specifications or how it works in the food chain? Okay, first of all...
I think the details you can work on bilaterally.
Yeah.
But at least for you as a business in Somalia,
yep.
How do you, this is an opportunity in Zanzibar, what do you do to really tap outside the markets?
Okay, first of all, one of the key things in terms of access to our solar solutions is affordability, because most of the people that we target are in the rural communities, people who, the women who make $1, $2 a day selling fish along the roadside, the women who, the companies that want to export their catch to the countries that are bordering them. Like in our case in Somalia, we have the main Mogadishu, we have Puntland, we have Somaliland. So what we do is we make sure that the solar solution that we give to the rural community is affordable. And affordability comes through our partnership with IFAD, with the AFDB, whereby we give them loans. They are able they're able to own without necessarily paying it upfront. So in that case, through our pay-go model, using the mobile payment, it's very diverse in Somalia. Even the women who sell the fish along the roadside, they're able to access a mobile phone. So each day after selling your catch, you can be able to pay us like $1 per day, $2 per day. Then we extend that within a period of probably 12 months. Then after that, now you are able to own, if it's a solar dryer, if it's a solution, maybe a freezer, you own it, it becomes yours. But then the stress of having to have like $3,000 to buy the same equipment, we already carried that for you. So that's how we are able to increase the food production along the chain, because when you don't have to cough a lot of money to fuel your generator. In Somalia, electricity is very expensive. a small company that probably makes about $5,000 per month, half of that goes to payment of electricity. So what we did is through our solution, that stress of having to buy fuel every day, we remove it. And then at the end of the day, you are able to own, if it's a solar dryer, you're able to own a freezer, you're able to own the whole system. That way, then you can be able to be sustainable along the food chain production.
I think, Simon, your next role is to travel to Zanzibar and do a market research there. Assunta, I think our colleagues were saying usually it's easier to exploit mines and to get it, to international standard compared to investing in agriculture. Why are we lagging in investment in agriculture, in your view?
Thank you. Ameka, right? Okay. One thing I will also tell you, in my country, there are two sectors that I don't even see government taking much interest in it. That is education and agriculture. And as we know, agriculture is the backbone of the country. One thing, there's a saying that goes, do not give me fish, but teach me how to fish. I think as Africans, you are talking of the natural resources in Africa, of which South Sudan is one of the countries also with the natural resources, is rich in resources. But if you can see, our country is still behind. It's not stable, it's not developed, even education. I think in East African community, we are, the literacy rate is like 24% or 25% out of all the other 6 countries, member state. What we need to do as Africans, I think, is like the capacity building. We need to be empowered. Like one of the challenges in my presentation there is this emergency project. This emergency project, we should forget about it. There's nothing like emergency project. You come with the things and then drop it and then go. No. Teach us how to fish so that tomorrow if you go, I will be seeing the hook, I will be seeing the net, I will see the river, but the way where I can be fishing. Because you have been giving me fish. You have been giving me fish. You have been catching fish from my river, but you did not teach me how to fish that fish from the river. So our problem is for us to sit down and then see how we will also enrich our own continent with the resources that we have. In terms of agriculture also, I know maybe some of you are parliamentarians, right? And the parliament, these are the lawmakers. We should take this one to the parliament and then say that like agriculture sector is left behind. That's what I always tell my colleagues back there. I said, one day if I go to parliament, just one day like this, if I go to parliament, my priority will be on agriculture. If you go to South Sudan, this is the fact. One day, one of you will travel here. If you just step at the border of South Sudan, it is all bush. People are all crowded in the city like this. And the land is just abandoned. Very fertile land is abandoned. The river is there. They say there's no rain. Can we all rely on rain? Singapore, how did Singapore develop? They used to take soil from Africa here to take it there to develop their country. Singapore is now more developed than some of the African countries. What we need to do as Africans is to sit down and see what is our problem. Our problem is we like getting fish, but we don't need how to learn how to fish. So let us sit down and start fishing. Thank you. And then maybe for my sister, because I'm also a producer, my sister, for your groups, I'm just complimenting Simon.
No, we'll come back. Thank you. Riyadh, would you like perhaps to address the questions on the fragility and the partnership with the research entities like ILRI?
Yes, there's also a question on the ownership of countries of the CRFA, its result, and to what extent that could be extended to national authorities. Actually, we do that. You know, the beauty with, when you have a data-driven tool, it is data-driven. It's factual, it's neutral and objectives, and And most of the data that we compile to get with the scores or the CRFA are compiled, they are collected from vetted database, and all of them are recognized by our countries. But more than this, what we do also, we engage in rounds of capacity building campaigns with all our regional member countries, with all our countries. And here we particularly engage with national statistics bureaus. We engage also with finance ministries or economic development ministry, and we get them on board during the preparation, of the CRFA, and they've been consulted during also the design of the CRFA tool itself and the choice of the different indicators. So they are pretty much involved in that. But in addition to that, we believe also the regional economic communities has a role to play in that space. So we are closely engaging with the likes of the ECOWAS, the IGAD, and others. And through capacity building programs, we take them during 3 or 4 days, and we go through the details of the CRFA, and we make sure that everybody is comfortable before even, with the data before deploying them. But the most important thing, and here I think it's really important also to not over-expect what is the CRFA is delivering, The CRFA will give you the broader trend, the broader, picture at the national level. But now, how you translate this, I remember in 2019 when we've been presenting the CRFA methodology to the board of directors, someone asked a very valid question. He said, okay, what's next? So you're doing this is a wonderful tool, it is universal, well-designed, but the big elephant in the room, how you translate this and how you have the capacity to translate these analytics into strategic and operational engagement. So by the end of the day, and speaking on, let me link up with the next question, we are not a research institute. Of course, we are supposed to deliver on development project and make an impact on the ground. So we have the responsibility also to make good analytics, of course, but also we have a larger responsibility to know how to translate the finding of these analytics into strategic and operational choices. So of course, and I think, to link up with the question, we do a lot in terms of using the result for disseminating these results, but with national authorities. But more than that, we need to disseminate results, but we need also to be influential. I mean, influential in terms of helping countries to use such type of results, to use that type of tools, but also to inform their own national development plans, their own strategic or sectoral strategies, et cetera, et cetera. And we've been doing this a lot. And I think, linking to the partnership question, these things, these analytics are very resource intensive. And I agree with you. We cannot go alone, I mean, one institution should partner with others, depending on the interest, depending on the fluidity of the situation on the ground. As far as we are concerned in the African Development Bank, we've been always advocating for joining forces on that front. We've been doing a lot of joint analytical assessment and fragility and resilience assessment in many contexts, either at the subnational level, at the national level, or even at the regional level. I have an example, we've been doing this, for instance, at the subnational level in the northern side of Mozambique. We've been partnering with the UK in the specific context of, the north in the Capo Delgado province, so that we can understand better what is the dynamic, what is the type of interaction between the different stakeholders and the interaction of power between the different stakeholders. We've been doing something similar in Burkina Faso, and we've been doing this with the World Bank, with the European Commission, with the United Nations, but the most important thing is that the finding of these joint assessments should inform, and it has informed actually, and we've been very impactful in terms of engaging the dialogue with national authorities, and we make sure that the government has committed in its 2021-25 strategy to, to remain sensitive to the findings of these assessments when it comes to, providing solutions to youth employment, providing also focusing on IDPs, on internally displaced people, et cetera, et cetera. So there are plenty of examples like this. To some extent, and I agree with you, fully agree with you, by joining forces, that makes the fragility assessment or the analytics, it makes it more credible and more heardable by the counterparts. So these are things that we look at very, very carefully, and we hope that in near future we will be conducting something similar jointly with the IFAD.
Definitely. I think, as Bernard has mentioned, we are interested in working more in investing in fragile situations. It doesn't reach the same quantum, but we're still interested in that, and definitely we need analysis to guide interventions, whether at the investment, research, or other domains.
Just a couple of words to respond properly to the question on partnership on research. We do a lot of, partnership with the Research Institute. Either we do it through, the broader context of fragility assessment, or we do it also in the context of ES, what we call internally ESW. ESW is economic sectoral work. And we do a lot of these things, so we can engage together. We have in the pipeline for 2023, we have a whole program on this aspect that we can engage together bilaterally, if you will too.
Thank you very much. Sir?
Yeah, I'm Victor Magnong. I work for the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, IITA. Nice meeting you too. I have two questions. First, to the FDB representative. This session is about fragility, working in very harsh environment, but we are aware that FDB also invests in the areas that are not fragile. So I would like to know, when you move to those vulnerable environments, what is your mode of operation? Are you still giving the loan? Is it a grant? So how are you intervening in those environments? And then the second question is to either of the first speakers, Assunta or Simon. So we are very happy to hear those success stories, but they remain very limited. Backyard, at the backyard of the house or in a small place. So what are your view? What will you suggest that you can scale out those success stories so that it happens in the whole of South Sudan or all of Somalia, so that really we change the status of this environment from vulnerable, fragile environment to prosperous environment? What should be done to scale out those success stories that you are presenting here? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And yes, please.
Hello, my name is Vicky. I am from Tanzania. I work for Actors for Community Empowerment and Environmental Sustainability, an NGO that is based here in Tanzania. My first question is based on the solar energy, just to add for the question that was asked. I wanted to know how friendly these solar equipments are to the land use, especially when you see a lot of people, they just like have a small land. So how friendly are they? And also, do you also give awareness on the use and maintenance? The other question is, we all know that one of the biggest issues when it comes to agriculture sector is brain drain. Youth are not really inspired to engage in agriculture activities, and this has a lot to do with them accessing financial resources, but the knowledge about agriculture is not really given to them at the early stages, from primary schools to secondary schools. So most of the youth are not really interested. So what do we do here? Like, what are the spaces where we can engage youth and explain to them, giving them awareness that there's potential in agriculture system? How do we deal with the brain drain? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to recognize Honorable Mr. Ngopinda, our former Prime Minister, is there. Please clap for him. My name is Sebastian Kingu. I'm the founder of Tanzania Pan-African Investors Association. The issue of smallholder farmers in Africa, we need to have a complete overhaul of the agricultural system we have. And the issue here, we have about 1 month developed a new formula so that the small-scale farmer in Tanzania and Africa transforms from a price taker to a price, dictating the price. So we are trying to look for partners like you. We have the formula. We know how to raise the funds. The issue is that we would like to, time has come for Africa to process all of her agricultural raw commodities. That is the issue. Cashew nuts, we have to process it here. And these large-scale industries have to be owned by farmers themselves. We have the formula. There's not enough time to explain. We've been asking the African Development Bank and other partners. We can talk more and change this scenario. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Right, so I believe, Simon, you had, will you take the first question about, there were a question about solar pumps and how smallholder friendly they are for small plots. Yep. And then the second question is, what do you need to scale up solar energy in Somalia?
Okay, first of all, I don't know if you know about the anatomy of Somalia. Somalia is, we don't have a lot of rainfall in Somalia. Like you can get just 1 week of rainfall in Somalia. So the rest of the time, if you have to produce food, if you have to feed your people, you have to depend on solar water pumps. Nothing else. There are no two ways about it. So how do we scale this? We scale this through, we start with young people, like the youth, like the people in the university. There's a lot of partnerships with our development partners like the USAID, the FDB, the World Bank. So what we do when the youth come out of the university, they come into our company as a private sector. That's how we are able to contribute to the community. We train the youth, both women and men. Like we have a project called Women in Solar. So we start showing them how to use solar to earn a livelihood, how to use solar to feed the community. And so that is one way of scaling the use of solar in our context, because we work in a very fragile environment whereby even when we receive the shipment from the port, transporting it to our destination is very difficult. There's a lot of armed conflict on the road. So what we do is we try to engage the local community. We try to engage the youth who are able to be our advocates, to be able to spread the good one. Then number two, you asked about how solar is safe. Solar is renewable energy. It is safe and it does not pollute the environment. And in our projects, we have contracts with the farmers whereby we are able to do after-sale service throughout the project. So that's how we are able to sustain the food production using the solar. The panel. So what we do, we have two ways of doing it. We can do like the solar that we put on the ground, And then we have solar like on the roof. So if your piece of land is too small, then we put it on roof so it doesn't take any part of the land. And number two, most of our projects are not so small scale per se. It's not like the small lad where Assunta says they'll do production just near their house. As we are partnering with at least people who can be able to own 2 acres of land. Why are we targeting 2 acres or 3 acres of land? Because of sustainability, because of livelihood. When you produce that food, out of our solar solution, you'll be able to produce enough food for the family, you're able to produce enough food for the market, and you're able to produce enough food for export into the other regions, because Somalia has 5 different regions. That is why we have, once we give you a solar solution for irrigation, we give you another solution for solar dryer. So the excess food that you have, you can be able to dry it and export to the nearest region, even to Ethiopia, even to Somaliland. The other part is for the fishing community. Once the catch comes from the fishermen, there's that chain, the fishermen to the person who owns a small business whereby they fleece the fish, and then there's also that woman who is selling the fish in the night along the street. So all that chain, we have a solution for all of it. Even in the night, because there is no electricity. Okay, some parts we have our solution, like the solar solution. We're able to give these women small solar lamps, whereby on the street you are able to, they can extend the working hours from 7 to 10 p.m. selling the same catch. So that chain, all of it, we take care of it.
Thank you, Simon. Assunta, the question on scaling up the success.
Thank you, Mr. Victor. Success story. Actually, I think I am even helped by my elder here. He answered it even. Said like, we don't want, again, like this small scale or small holders farmers. We need like a massive agriculture. Like, you don't only backyard. You were talking of backyard. This project was an emergency during Corona. It was only 1.4 million given to 3 counties of South Sudan. 3 counties, if you go to 3 counties, each county has 4 payams. And each payam has 5 bomas. Each bomas has 13 villages. You see, you have to divide this to 3 counties. From 3 counties to payams, from payams to bomas. So that was, now, how it is even one of the challenges, but the remedy we're thinking is like, this group, after establishing them, we don't need to abandon them and then go again and go create another group. We should at least put this group in a certain stage where like they will now be resilient, they will be self-sustainable, and then connect them with finance, with some financial institutions. With microfinancial institutions where they will be taking loans at the lower rate to be able to scale up. And then the other thing also, for those who write proposals, like Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security back in my home there, should be looking for developmental project that purely concentrate on agriculture. Developmental project, not this project that comes only for 6 months, for 1 year, and then the group is now abandoned. We should look for developmental project that will concentrate on agriculture, and then we put group to the certain level where now they will be able to transform to the larger one now, not the backyard one now. Thank you.
Let me add something. In terms of scaling up, so what we do, especially in our setup in Somalia, we tailor make solutions that fit certain people. For example, if you are doing tomato farming, and this tomato farming, you wanted to end up in the market at the end of the day. And who are the people who go to the market? Most of the time are the women. So you bring these people on table when you are designing a certain project so that there's sustainability, so that the project can run for several years because they were put on board from the word go. They designed it for themselves. They love it, so they'll keep producing it over and over. But this idea of having some people sitting in the boardroom to design a project, and they're not the people who are implementing it, that is why it dies within very few months, because they were not involved from the word go. So one of the ways of scaling it is making sure that when you are designing the project, you have the people who will run with it up to the end. They're able to sustain it.
Thank you, Simon. It's good to see private sector planning in action.
Yes, I think there's the question on the bank engagement in fragile and non-fragile situation, and to what extent that differ in terms of providing loans and grants. You know, as the African Development Bank works in coordination with other institutions, so we have the credit policy which define the bank, you know, engagement. So you are right, there are categories of countries. I mean, as far as the bank group is concerned, we differentiate between what we call ADB countries and ADF countries. ADB countries are those that will borrow from the non-concessional window of the bank, which is the African Development Bank window. And then you have ADF, the African Development Fund, which provide concessional resources. But these considerations are purely financial, and it, you know, by the end of the day, the differentiation will depend on the credit worthiness of countries, and these are, you know, some microeconomic talks, and then also that it will depend on a second criteria, which is about the level of revenue. Basically, we measure it with GDP per capita. And these, you know, criteria are aligned with what the IMF and the World Bank are doing. But the point here is that because your question, you are linking it with fragile and non-fragile situation. You know, in the bank, we consider that all African countries are fragile to some degrees of fragility. But in the meantime, they are resilient. So we move away from that differentiation, this binary differentiation between fragile and non-fragile. All of us can be fragile, and all of us can be resilient to some extent. So we no longer link the issue of loan and grants, but just to give you comfort, you know, I mean, for the least developed countries, for the most fragile countries, and for those who are eligible for the non-concessional resources, these are very, very concessional. We are talking about, you know, because loans, you have different terms of loans, you know, but the one that we deploy for a fragile situation, at least for what we call transition countries or transition states, is very, very cheap. So that's and I think, you know, that links also to the question on the way and avenues to scale up results. And I think, again, this is really a money talk. And His Excellency, former minister, is here, he can tell you. Most of our countries are not struggling with the terms of loans, but the volumes. Most of the time, you know, I mean, most of our countries, even, you know, some of those that are fragile are raising bonds on the market at non-concessional, at very, you know, expensive terms, because they need a lot of, you know, volumes of resources. The issue is that, I mean, institutions like ours, like the IFAD, and I can tell from my experience in the different replenishment rounds, these are very, very tough discussions. And no one is willing to put, you know, money on the table to support, you know, the ambitions of scaling up resources. How can you scale up resources for, impacts or results on a project with 1 million US dollars for 3 countries? This is a money talk. Definitely, this is a money talk. So if you raise the level of resources, yes, then we can talk about raising and scaling up results and impact. But the issue is that, these are, the resource mobilization effort of MDBs and of institutions like IFAD and others is a real issue. And we need the support, and I think, if you ask my personal view, we need the support of our clients. So I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Riyad. And Honorable Sir, perhaps you would like to give us a concluding thoughts. Yes, he did. Please, sir. Yes. So perhaps you can share with us your wisdom, how to make agriculture resilient and a domain for future generations.
Jamani Waswahili wenzangu, habari za jioni. And for those who cannot understand the Swahili language, good evening. I came here because I thought it was important for me, because the topic is an exciting one, and I wanted to take advantage of learning from the discussions that were taking place. I thought many of you did not know who I was. Now that gentleman is the one who has actually created this. Yeah, but second, yes, I came in a bit late. You had already embarked on the topics, but I got the gist, so no problem. But let me straight go congratulate my brothers and sisters there for, I think it was a fairly good presentation, and I could hear your reaction to some of the questions, which were quite pertinent. And I got more impressed by Madam. You come from South Sudan? Wow. It's nice to be with you. Mm. Anyway, I'll talk very general. I don't want to go into the topic, but I'll just cover some of the things that I think are crucial when we are meeting for a topic that is pertinent to us, particularly in Africa. And I'll keep on shouting, whether we like it or not. Agriculture will remain a sector that we shall have to depend on. We shall have to move from this stage to industrialization and other activities, but the basis will still be our land. Others have done it, and we know where they are. So I don't see why we shouldn't do that as well. But secondly, in the case of the discussions that we are undergoing now, the most important thing in my humble view is that Africa must struggle first to make sure our countries are peaceful. There is peace for their own people, but peace even for those who want to come and invest in our nation. Without peace, things cannot move in the way we want. Okay? 2, Africa, I'm told, come 2050, the world will be clicking, I'm told, about 9 billion people or so. Africa, I think, will be close to about 2 billion or a bit more than that. So the agenda on food security, agriculture, becomes very, very important. Madam said something, and I said this is important. Don't give me fish. Teach me how to fish. Okay? We'll get assistance left and right, up and down. If we do that, we should say thank you in the first place. But more importantly, let's use that money now to create a nation that will be boasting the next few years because of the assistance we received left and right, rather than pocketing that money and then the nation doesn't get anything out of that. That would be terrible. But still, what she said should be the driving literature for most of us. Give me fish, but I would prefer if you teach me how to fish. So for Africa, I think that should be the way forward. That should be the way forward. With agriculture, Africa is endowed with a lot of things. Most of these areas, good land, fairly good rains, okay? The climatic conditions are not so harsh in most of the countries that we can take advantage of. Tanzania, for instance, we have close to about 44 million hectares of arable land, excellent land. So how much are we able to use for agricultural purposes? It's just a small fraction. The question, why? Why can't we do more than that? So as we meet in this forum, the government's dream is to make Tanzania the food basket for Africa. And we think we can. We think we can. It will need a total transformation on dealing with agriculture. We need a lot of new technological aspects to be taken into account. Good seeds. We need fertilizers. We need experts in agriculture. We need extension services up to the lowest level so that our farmers are able to be taught. We must empower them by telling them how to go about it and what will be the result, etc., etc. So we are moving along that line. Now, I don't know, it will take us how many years, but we have our own dreams. In this endeavor, our president and the government machinery have come up with what they've coined as building a better tomorrow. It's BBT. And the people who are going to move with that project, with that program, women and the youth. You might probably ask why. It's because statistics tell us the youth are more than the rest of us. Women, on the other hand, are more than everything else that you can think of, including the youth. Okay? So the government said, we probably need to rethink and see how we can use these women and these young guys to come up now as people who are driving this idea in the next 5, 10 years to come. So we are determined on that. Of course, we need a lot of efforts. And for that reason, madam, you must be driven by a strong political will from the leadership of any country if you want to achieve some of these basic ideas that we are struggling to understand. In our country, I'm glad our President, Madam Samia Suluhu Hassan, has clearly expressed that position. And she's determined to move on that line. So, while we discuss some of these things, let's bear in mind that there are also other basic things that must be in place in order to enable other things to proceed. Otherwise, poverty will keep on hunting us, ignorance will be part of our life, diseases will still be rampant with us, just because we have not been able to get where we want to get. And for Africa, madam, unity for Africa is crucial. If Africa cannot see the need for unity, we'll keep on shouting and shouting and shouting, but will not be able to move a big step. Europe, America, they are all fighting for unity. Africa is struggling for small countries. Terrible. We are wasting our time. Anyway, let's not go into that. So let me just say in conclusion that I think it's a good opportunity to meet under this forum. I believe many of us will come out with some ideas, new ideas, as to what now each nation should try and do. We want to drive this idea and we'll make use of this forum effectively, and we want by 2030, as Tanzania, to see that we have moved a step that is fairly reasonable to enable us to start, boasting that we are doing A, B, C, D in this country. Congratulations to all of you, and thanks for those who have been able to come and attend this beautiful conference. We still have time to go into the details, but we in Tanzania, youth and women, and we already have the ideas on what we are going to do with this group called women and this group called the youth. We are now busy trying to generate other ideas so that we move along with this kind of thing. Of course, they'll need a lot of things. Financial inclusion is something that you cannot separate. We have to go with it and see how we can move along, etc., etc. But be ready to read from others. Let's learn from each other. There are countries that have done so well to transform their countries through agriculture. Let's not ignore that. Wherever there's that chance, this is why we meet. And that's why we invite people like you. Okay? Let's come and see what we can do. Lastly, we will work with the private sector to the closest manner we can think of. And the president has stipulated that one, and that's why we are very thankful for the previous leaders. We have the Tanzania Business Council, and the chair of that one is the president herself, so that we take into account the private sector. Jamani, sorry. Sijui mlianzia wapi na mimi sijui nimeishia wapi, lakini mtajua wenyewe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, and I think this nicely concludes our side event. Thank you very much for joining, and thank you very much for your time. So you can watch us on the web stream, and if you need any bilateral conversation, so my colleagues are here today and tomorrow still. So thank you very much. Thank you.
you for joining us. My name is Peter Goldstein. I'm the Vice President of Communications for Heifer International. And you're at this session called Herding Change, Sustainable Livestock Innovation by Women and Youth. And we're really excited about this session because we're going to be hearing about people, particularly women here, who are really doing innovative things in livestock, really thinking about how to make it more sustainable, more profitable, and more attractive to lots of other Africans who may want to get in the same field as well. I should say that our co-sponsors for this session are Heifer International, the Global Dairy Platform, the International Livestock Research Institute, Land O'Lakes Venture 37, and SNV, and we thank all our partners for participating. We're going to start off with a little introduction, and just one second, please. And we're very, very fortunate to have as our moderator today Shirley Tarawali, who's a legend in the field. She's Assistant Director General at ILRI, which is one of the CGIAR centers, and she's chair of the Global Agenda for Sustainable Livestock. And she has been spearheading ILRI's strategy and process in the growth in their portfolio of sustainable livestock advocacy and communications. And she's going to start us off, and then we're going to turn to the panelists here who are going to tell us a little bit about what they're doing, followed by a moderated discussion, and then we'll open up for questions from the audience. So I'll pass it over to Shirley. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to this side event at the 2023 Africa Food Systems Forum, the forum that focuses on Africa's solutions to food system transformation. And this event focuses on 3 ingredients that we think can really come together and contribute to that transformation. It focuses on livestock, milk, meat, and eggs. It focuses on women, and it focuses on youth, young people. The systems that animals are raised in, how they're processed, how they're sold, and the multiple benefits that they bring for women and youth. So we want to use this session, this 90 minutes or so, to really highlight the transformative power of sustainable livestock, focusing on women and youth entrepreneurship in the sector. We're going to hear from our panel members about some successful business models that we will then be able to unpack and discuss a bit, and hopefully they will inspire us and guide some recommendations that will help to foster that inclusivity and that support for women who are working in the livestock sector, looking at sustainability, looking at entrepreneurship, looking at how to cope in the context of a climate crisis. Why is this important? I suspect for most, I don't need to say very much about that. We know that livestock are fundamental for multiple development aspects in this part of the world, across Africa, across Asia, but also in other parts of the world too, where animals are important for food and nutrition, animal foods important for food and nutrition, for livelihoods, probably 1.7 billion people across the world deriving some livelihood benefit from animals. They're important for the environment, both making sure that they don't damage the environment, but also making sure that they can contribute to environmental benefits that we know can come from raising animals well and in sustainable ways. And they're important for health. We know that if we get it wrong, issues of food safety, of zoonotic diseases can be an immense challenge. But that's not going to stop us eating animal foods because they're important. So let's consider how we address these things. Why is this important for women? Well, the recent FAO publication highlighted some of the really important roles that women and agriculture, the intersections between women and agriculture. Stats like closing the gender gap in farm productivity and the wage gap could increase GDP across the world by about $1 trillion and reduce food insecure people by about 45 million. We know that more women than men are usually employed across Africa, certainly, in agri-food systems. And livestock are important in that context too. Sometimes the only assets that women may own, and really important in that context of a woman in providing nutrition for her kids in the household, being able to have animal source foods. When we talk about youth, 70% of Africa's population under 30. The livestock sector, one of the fastest growing, and therefore increased demand, lots of opportunities. Milk, meat, and eggs, lots of opportunities to be part of that growth. But we've got to grasp those opportunities so that young people do benefit. So we want to use this session to highlight livestock as part of the solution for food systems transformation, and to highlight some of the possibilities and opportunities that that brings. Through our sharing, our deliberations, we hope to explore how livestock, sustainable livestock, can be part of a solution, what sort of innovations can help advance sustainability and addressing these different conundrums that we may face, climate being one of them, for example, how livestock can contribute better to women, to nutrition, to young people's livelihoods. And what does that mean for policies, for investments? What messages should we take out of this room so that we get some action and we don't come back and have the same discussion next year? So with that, I'd like to introduce and invite our 4 speakers who are going to share some little snippets of what they're doing that really exemplifies the sorts of things I've just been talking about. This is what it looks like on the ground. They're going to, each of them, tell you a little bit about who they are and what they're doing, a little story, and highlight some key challenges and key takeaway messages in that regard. We have 2 who focus on dairy and 2 who focus on poultry. So with that, let me start with the first, who is Margaret Munene, who is the Managing Director of Palm House Dairies in Kenya. And just before we came in, Margaret was telling us she started in 1989 with 1 cow, just to make sure the kids got a bit of milk, I think. And now she's 10,000 liters a day, it seems, yeah? So an interesting story. And I'd like to invite Margaret to take her 5 minutes, and I'm going to be strict on time. And I think we have some slides somewhere. Maybe
Thank you, Shirley. Good afternoon, everybody. Like Shirley has said, my name is Margaret Munene. I come from Kenya. We run a dairy processing company called Palm House Dairies. Now, our topic today is herding change. And to do that and to tell you how we have innovated, we'll quickly tell you our story, how we started and where we are at now. I was a dairy farmer, and I started with 1 cow, and the main reason I started keeping a cow is because I had young children, and I wanted good milk for my children. And as you well know, cows multiply like humans, and they grow. And within no time, I had more than a cow, and I had more milk than my family needed. And I decided to sell my milk to the cooperative, which was near me. And over time, my cows grew, and feeding them was a challenge. And as I continued selling my milk to the cooperative near me, I actually wondered, was it a hobby that I was doing? Because I couldn't make ends meet. And over time, I deliberated whether to just sell my cows or find a solution. I was then working as a research scientist in a government parastatal in Kenya. And as I kept milk, my friends kept on asking, I kept on gifting my friends milk as I went to work. And over time, they asked me if I could just sell the milk to them. And therefore, I thought, yeah, why not? I can be selling this milk to them. They'll give me a better price than selling it to the cooperative. And therefore, every morning I'd have, in the boot of my car, I started with maybe 20, 30. And by the end of it, I had 300 liters of milk in the boot of my car as I went to work. And I realized I was actually making more money selling this milk as a side hustle than the government was paying me as a research scientist. And around that time, the dairy industry in Kenya was a monopoly. We had one KCC, a government parastatal, that was buying milk for all the farmers. And after some time, the parastatal also collapsed. So majority of us as farmers had nowhere to sell milk. And the farmers around me also had nowhere to sell milk. So I started selling milk. I started buying milk from them. And I started selling this milk to town. Now I migrated from the boot of my car. I got a pickup. And therefore, I was selling raw milk, 500, 600 liters of milk in Nairobi. Fortunately, we are not too far from Nairobi. And over time, the dairy industry in Kenya was liberalized. And we just thought, wow, this is a good opportunity. We are already selling milk. I knew pasteurized milk is better than raw milk. And therefore, we decided that we would, since now we would actually look for money and open a processing company. This was not easy, but eventually we were able to open Farmhouse Dairies with the help of a loan from the European Investment Bank. I continued, so we opened the company, and therefore I bought more and more milk from farmers. To date, we have close to 400 farmers, and 85% of these farmers who sell milk to us are women. Now, since I was also a dairy farmer myself, eventually, of course, I stopped farming, and I started concentrating on processing, but I knew all the challenges that the farmers were facing. And I considered our farmers as partners and not just farmers who are delivering milk to us. And therefore, as a company, we decided to address the challenges that they were facing. And one of the challenges was knowledge. Our farmers did not have a lot of knowledge about looking after dairy cows, what to do if the cows were sick, what to feed them. And therefore, we started what we call barazas, which we still do today. And every quarter, we call all our farmers and we do barazas on certain topics, bookkeeping, and just keeping, knowing that dairy farming is really a business, not just. And that helped them. We also realized that AI was a challenge, and veterinary services was also a challenge. And we all know that happy, healthy cows produce more. And therefore, we got somebody who would serve our farmers' cows when they came on heat in good time. We also got a veterinary officer who would treat our farmers' cows when they got sick, which we still do. By the way, these services used to be offered by our government a long time ago, but over time, the services are no longer offered. And therefore, this really, really helped our farmers. Our farmers have now, and we have data, started to producing more milk, and therefore they give us, as a dairy, more milk also. So it's a win-win situation. The other thing was finances. And like I said earlier, happy, healthy cows produce more. And we wanted our farmers to have better zero grazing units. By the way, our farmers are small scale and they do zero grazing. But actually doing a zero grazing unit is pretty expensive, and we were able to connect our farmers, which we still do, to microcredit companies that would give them money, and we vouch for them in that they sell to us milk, and therefore the microcredit knows that they will be paid. And finally, in terms of environment, we realized that also we needed ourselves and our farmers do something about climate change. And we have encouraged our farmers to grow trees. This helps them. We also do biogas, and therefore, because they have biogas, they don't have to cut down trees, but we are planting more trees. And we also help our farmers to look after their soils. By planting trees, there is less soil erosion, and we encourage them to put manure back onto their farms. And I know my time is up. So that is what we are basically doing. I have addressed the challenges. Of course, the opportunity in this kind of a business is that our population are growing, and milk is a very, very good food. It is nature's best food. I mean, it is very, very protein dense. And therefore, we still need more milk to feed our population, especially in places like here or in Kenya where you actually get stunted children. And therefore, we need to produce more milk. Dairy empowers women. A woman who has a cow is an empowered woman. And also, there is a readily available market. We offer market for our farmers. We're actually looking for more milk. And therefore, livestock...
You're going to save some of these points for the discussion.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Margaret. A round of applause for Margaret, please. You know, one of the things that Margaret mentioned was access to knowledge. And our next speaker, also in the dairy space, focusing on using that digital environment to help youth, employment, income. This is Jemima Wanjiku, who is the co-founder of DigiCow in Kenya. Jemima, please.
Thank you and good afternoon. Conversations by women make me happy, but I'm happy that Peter is here to make the equation balanced, yeah? So I'm Jemima Wanjiku, a co-founder DigiCow Africa, and I'm also a specialist in people management. DigiCow, I'll give a backstory of why we began. It was born out of a farmer and also a livestock extension officer who still works with the government of Kenya. And it was begun out of a need. She began her own dairy farm far from where she worked. And every other weekend when she went home to check on the cows, there was no data that would support production for that week. So she thought, what can I do about this to assist myself? And that is why DigiCow was born. We began as a record-keeping app where we were digitizing records, basic records for the farmer, so that they're able to make informed decisions. And why did we develop this app? Margaret has mentioned some of the challenges that farmers face. Low productivity being a major, and this production is low because they have uninformed, unverified information, uninformed decisions because they do not have data that they can base their decisions on. They also lack access to veterinary services, which is very crucial, and that's why we developed DigiCow. Next. Meet David. David is a 23-year-old gentleman who hails from Kajiado, Kenya. And for anyone who has been to Kenya and who has been to Kajiado, they would understand the dynamics of the landscapes. It's a dry area, and farmers are into livestock farming. And what does David do within DigiCow? He trains farmers on important farming practices through the app. We host audio trainings, which are customized in local languages, and David is only armed with a smartphone and a Bluetooth speaker, and he amplifies the audios for the farmers to listen when they're in a group. This ensures that there is standard information across board, and farmers are trained on one thing across board without distortion. Another thing, the farmers also dial a USSD code to self-register themselves that they were in attendance. And back end, we also carry out quality surveys where we give callbacks to these farmers to establish whether or not content was retained. David does not work for free, he earns. And that is how we empower the youth. He earns on a weekly basis, earning an average of 6,000 Kenyan shillings, and it is paid through his M-Pesa. And he does not only earn from trainings, he is also able to aggregate inputs that the farmers need, be it mineral salts, be it dewormers, be it acaricides, etc. Once he aggregates, he resells to the farmers at a retail price. So David becomes a mobile agrovet. These are pictorial evidence. He also carries out mass tick control. For areas like Kajiado and northern Kenya, what we do, we mobilize these farmers for mass activities be it tea control or deworming, so that they're able to aggregate during market days. They aggregate their animals, they are dewormed, and also David digitizes this data. He digitizes this data and indicates dewormed number of cows, and there's a way that the system also helps him to track. That's our work. We partner with input suppliers, for example, CKL Africa, also Unga Farm Care, etc. Yes, next. And of course, it has come with challenges, one of which has been language barrier. Kenya is very diverse with different local languages, and we've been lucky enough to have partners who have been willing to translate these audio trainings for the farmers, and also an availability of resources linked to financial constraints. You find that you capacity build a farmer, but you want to encourage the farmer not to end at capacity building. They need to be adopting. But some of the technologies, for example, biogas installation is very heavy on the farmer, and they do not have these finances, which becomes a constraint to adoption and also on impact. Some of the opportunities we've had is collaboration with partners. For example, Heifer International, which has been very crucial in us scaling our services across multiple counties. Also use of digitized data to make informed decisions. The data that we digitize around health and breeding is used by input suppliers to make informed market decisions, also used by the government to bridge gaps when it comes to health and also breeding, and also used by the farmer to make farm-level decisions that influence their productivity. Also use of data to increase financial credibility of the farmers. For that, we are piloting an insurance program in partnership with APA, whereby we want farmers to at least insure just one cow for the first year, then they can upgrade to other cows. Key lessons: collaboration is key, especially when you are working with large numbers, and you cannot do it alone. And there are things that you do not necessarily need to reinvent the wheel. They've been done before, so you can just plug in. The young people are very volatile, and you need to structure your business model in a manner that makes it make sense for them. They do not want you to hold their money very long. They appreciate being paid a little bit earlier, and that's why we pay them on a weekly basis. Also, they see value in being able to explore other opportunities where they can charge the farmers for silage making, etc. And also, data is queen. I don't know who said it's king, but based on this panel, data is queen.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jemima. So 2 dairy examples, very real things that are working on the ground from Kenya. We're going to hear from people who are raising poultry now here in Tanzania. We're going to start first with Paulina Kilindi. And thank you, Paulina, for stepping in towards the last minute when we were organizing this panel. Paulina is a female role model and champion in youth-led enterprises. The opportunities for youth employment that SNV deploys. She's based in Singida here, and she's going to tell you what poultry has done for her. She's going to speak in Swahili, so the young lady here is also going to help us with translation. This is
Habarini za jioni. Kwa majina naitwa Paulina Yohana Kilindi. Nimetokea mkoa wa Singida, wilaya ya Ilamba, kijiji cha Kisiriri. Mimi ni mfugaji wa kuku. Pia ni mnufaika wa mradi wa OYE.
She's Pauline Kilindi from Singida, Kisilili village in Ramba district, and she's a poultry keeper.
Ufugaji wa kuku ni biashara ambayo inakuwa sana hapa nchini Tanzania. Hivyo imetupelekea sisi vijana kuweza kuingia kwenye ufugaji kutokana na mabadiliko ya maisha ya sasa, watu wanapenda kula nyama ya kuku kuliko nyama zingine. Hivyo basi,
So poultry farming is a growing business in Tanzania, and it has been developed based on the taste or the change of the taste of the people, that we love eating chicken more than the way we love eating other kinds of meat. So that has influenced them to venture in this kind of a business.
katika ufugaji wa kuku kuna mambo mengi ambayo tumeweza kunufaika nayo, na pia vijana wanaofuga kuku na vijana na wanawake pia wanaofuga kuku, kuna mambo ambayo tumenufaika nayo.
So from the poultry farming, there is a lot that they have benefited from it, and she is going to share some of the benefit or some of the experiences that she has had.
Moja ni kukuza uchumi. Kutokana na kufuga kuku, tumeweza kujipatia kipato sisi kama vijana wa vijijini, ili kuweza kujikimu wenyewe, kuweza kuendesha familia na kusaidia mambo madogo madogo, kuondokana na utegemezi wa familia. Tunaweza kujimudu wenyewe kutokana na ufugaji wa kuku.
So they have increased their income and improved their livelihoods and reduced the dependence rate from their families, and they can sustain themselves and they can support their own families based on the income that they earn from the poultry farming activities.
Cha pili, imeweza kutusaidia kuweza kuboresha mfumo wa lishe kwa sababu ya kuuza mayai na pia tunauza nyama. Hiyo inasaidia jamii kuweza kuondokana na ile hali ya utapiamlo, hasa kwa watoto ambayo ilikuwa inasumbua sana kipindi cha nyuma kutokana na imani zetu tulizokuwa nazo. Hivyo kwa ufugaji wetu umeweza kuwasaidia watoto kuondokana na utapiamlo.
So they have also contributed to the improvement of the nutrition in the communities from selling meat and the chicken meat, but as well as eggs. And compared to the way it was before, they had their own beliefs that sometimes they wouldn't eat eggs, or eggs would be eaten by the elders, especially the men. But now at least children as well as pregnant women can access eggs and meat and improve their nutrition. And they have reduced the rate of malnutrition in their communities.
Kitu cha tatu, imeweza kutengeneza ajira kwa vijana. Kwa sababu ufugaji wa kuku hautegemei mtu mmoja. Hata mimi ninavyofanya sifanyi mwenyewe peke yangu. Kuna watu nyuma ambao wananufaika kutokana na ufugaji wangu kwa kujipatia ajira.
So they have also employed other young people from the kind of work that they are doing, because she doesn't work alone. She works with other young people who also earns their income from whatever she's doing.
Kitu cha nne, nimefanyika kama kituo cha vijana wengine kuja kujifunza kutokana na shughuli ninayoifanya, jinsi wanavyoiona na jinsi ambavyo ninaendelea kukua kiuchumi. Hivyo inapelekea vijana wengine kuvutiwa na kuja kwangu kuweza kujifunza ili na wenyewe wakafanya.
So being a role model and a champion in her community, she has become like a center for the rest of the young people to learn from her, and other community members who comes at her home to learn from it and go practice the same that she's doing.
Lakini pamoja na hayo, kwenye mafanikio daima hapakosi changamoto. Kuna changamoto ambazo tunazipitia kwenye ufugaji wa kuku.
Yeah, there are challenges that she experiences when she's running her poultry farming business.
Kitu cha kwanza ni mabadiliko ya tabia ya nchi. Hiyo inapelekea kutokuzalisha kwa wingi, hasa msimu wa masika pale ambako kunakuwa na ubaridi. Hivyo vifaranga kukua wanakuwa kwa shida sana kutokana na hali ya hewa.
So the first challenge is the climate change, and especially during the winter season, that the chicks cannot sustain the cold weather. So the production goes low during that season, and that also impacts her business.
Kitu cha pili ni upatikanaji wa madawa na chakula pia, chakula cha kuku. Hasa tunapata shida vijijini. Vyakula vya kuku na madawa yanapatikana mjini, ambako sisi muda mwingine inatukosti kwenda mjini mbali na kurudi, afu bei zake zinakuwa za juu. Kwa hiyo chakula cha kuku kinakuwa changamoto na madawa kuyapata kwa wakati.
Okay, another challenge is on accessibility and affordability of the chicken feeds, medicine, and the vaccines. And given that she lives in the rural areas, it takes her a long time to travel from the rural area to the town, to the urban centers to get the medicine and the vaccines and the food, the chicken feeds. And that also affects her.
Kitu cha tatu ni nishati, changamoto ya nishati. Kijijini sisi umeme bado haujatufikia, kwa hiyo kuna muda mwingine tunakosa kufikia malengo, kwa sababu ufugaji wa kuku kwanza unahitaji mashine za kutotolesha ili uweze kuzalisha kwa wingi. Hivyo sisi tunashindwa kufanya hivyo. Mbadala yake tunaenda mjini kuchukua vifaranga na kuja kijijini kufuga. Vile vile inatukosti kwenye chanjo. Kuna chanjo za ubaridi ambazo inatakiwa uchanje kuku, chanjo yake inakuwa ya ubaridi. Mpaka kuifikisha kijijini unakuta chanjo imeshayeyuka, unapata hasara. Kwa hiyo na kuku kishamchelewesha chanjo inapelekea vifo vingi kutokana na nishati.
Okay. Another challenge that she has shared, it's based on the electricity issues, that in the communities where she lives, there is no power, and sometimes she cannot incubate the eggs and have more chicks at once. She just have to go and buy them from town. And sometimes there are some of the medicine and the vaccines that have to be kept in the refrigerators, but she cannot access that. Whenever she goes to buy the vaccines in the urban centers, by the time she reaches at home, then there won't be any kind of ice, and she end up getting the losses. So just jump in, nenda kwenye ulivyojifunza.
Kitu ambacho nimejifunza kutokana na ufugaji wa kuku, nimeona kwamba vijana wa kike wanafanya vizuri zaidi ukilinganisha na makundi mengine, kwa sababu vijana wa kike yule ni mlezi. Tunaweza tukasema labda mama anavyolea watoto wake ndivyo na kuku wanavyotakiwa kulelewa. Kwa hiyo kwa maana hiyo watoto wa kike au wamama wanafanya vizuri zaidi kwenye ufugaji, kwa sababu kuku anahitaji muda mwingi wa kumwendo.
So what she has said, one of her takeaways is that females are doing very well in poultry farming, using the experiences that they have like mothers, because chicks have to be kept like the little babies. So you need to have time to look after them, to clean them, to make sure that the environments are clean. So the way they have that experience, that's a kind of an experience that they're using, and that makes them do better more than men. Men are a little bit mobile, more than women. Sorry. Thank you. Yeah, the last one, just wrap up.
Lakini nimejifunza kitu kingine. Ufugaji wa kuku sio kitu chepesi kama wengine wanavyofikiria. kwa sababu inahitaji kujitoa, inatumia yani muda mwingi huo upo unawakea. Ukishacheza kidogo tu unaweza ukaua. Kwa hiyo inahitaji muda mwingi sana kujitoa na kuipenda kazi yako, ndivyo utaweza kufikia malengo.
So poultry farming is not like an easy activity to do. It needs a lot of commitment. If you mess up a bit, you might end up losing everything and you get losses. So that's one of the other things that she has learned while she has been doing this business. Thank you.
And here's somebody else who's really shown that commitment, again in the poultry sector here in Tanzania, but now at a very different scale than what we've just heard of. Elizabeth Swai is the founder of AKM Glitters, which is an integrated poultry business, does a lot of intentional work with women, with youth, and I understand she has over 500,000 farmer beneficiaries now. So Elizabeth, your story, please.
Thank you so much. My name is Elizabeth. I'm the founder of AKM Glitters Company Limited. It was founded in 2007, starting with 250 chickens. At the moment, we are investing along poultry value chain. We've invested in parent stock farms. We are the only certified producers of broilers in Tanzania. And we have invested in the hatchery with a capacity of producing 156 chickens every week, a total of 3 million chicks in a year. We also have invested in feed mill operations with a capacity of producing 250 metric tons of feed, starting from 250 chickens in 2004. Our model, we do produce chicks and feeds, and then we have partnered with other partners who supply vaccines and drugs, and we use that for educating, for our training models. So we have created a package of chicks. As you heard, she was saying she was having a problem of accessing vaccines and drugs. And so our company is packaging chicks, drugs, vaccines, and take them to the villages. So when we started, we still continue with that model. We have a smaller scale of women who are keeping a package of 540 chickens. So why 540? We did some analysis on profitability. So we thought from 540, with 40 being for mortality and 500 for sales, that's where the farmer makes profit, not less than 500 chickens. At the moment, we are also having, we opened up a commercial wing where we are working with youth and incubation model. We are training these youth. One incubation center, we take about 50 youth. We train them for 6 months. We have partnered with, we partner with different donor organizations. We've created a revolving fund model, whereas we have seed money that is not touched after sale. So after sale, the profit is being saved for 6 months for the group of 10 people, each group. And then after 6 months, they get a profit of 8 to 10 million to start their poultry enterprise outside the incubation center. We also have linkages program, whereas we work with women vendor. We are working with women on a project partnered with ILRI, whereas these vendors are school ladies that were not employed after their degrees from vet education. So we recruit them. They come into the program. They provide extension services, but they are also becoming vendors, whereas they work with brooders. So they buy from brooders, they go and vend to the poultry development groups at the village level. What they are doing exactly is, because they have the expertise, they sell, but at the same time, they deliver the message on the technical part, like providing extension services and also messaging the messages for nutrition. So our training model is purely practical. At the incubation center, we do not select the youth that are coming in. We are taking in 50% boys and 50% girls, and we also have women brooders. We train them on different types of models, from self-awareness and personal development. That's very important because we have human characters that affect business. For example, anger. We realize that many of the youth are having anger issues, so we have to deal with that before they get into the business. The second thing that we do is business development and financial inclusion. And then we also train them about leadership. So the incubation center, after the leadership training, they are being left in a group, and then they form their groups on their own. They develop constitution. We help them register their groups. They open a bank account, and all the profit is controlled into their accounts. So at the end of the 6-month period, they graduate, so they have to start doing poultry as fattening now. So we are moving from brooding, they are going into fattening. So when they go out of the incubation center, they become a market for the incubation center. That means they go into fattening. Where do they get funds? They have startup funds, and then we also have partnered with EFTA to provide all our smallholder farmers with capital. So our poultry farmers now, they have capital. All they have to do is to have 25% of that capital, and EFTA will loan them 75% of the capital. And what will be the collateral? It's insurance. And they are given a short time to return the loan and be able to retake the loan again. That means they have an access of trading with the incubation center about 8 times a year. That means in 6 months, if they are making 8 million, a group of 10 youth are making 8 million, that means in 1 year, they will make double the amount. And they will only be keeping 2,165 chicks and sell them at 4 weeks, vaccinated, to the poultry development groups. Voila, that's it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I think we've heard really, really good examples, from small to big, to bringing digital into the equation. We've heard things that really work, making livestock a viable enterprise for women and young people, but also, of course, starting to meet that all-important demand. We're going to have a discussion now, and in order to improve on the gender balance of our panel, I'm going to call a couple of guest panelists to come along. Firstly, Joachim Balakana. Would you like to come and take a seat? He's the national coordinator here in Tanzania for Land O'Lakes Venture 37. He's done a lot of work on dairy in particular. And William Matovu, who is the Uganda country director for Heifer International. And William has done a lot of work in the business space, particularly with smallholders, women and youth. But my first question, and Joachim, maybe you can go first and take less than 5 minutes if you can. From these different presentations, what did you hear that you think is really critical? What's working? And was there a gap? Did you miss something? Oh.
Thank you, Sherry. As you introduced myself, my name is Joachim Balakana. I'm working with the Land O'Lakes Venture 37. I have my colleague here on my right-hand side here. My CEO is there, John Ehrenberg, my director, Dai Harvey, and the colleagues from Land O'Lakes are there. Thank you for having me in this discussion, and really I wanted to respond to your question. What did I see here as really something which is very surprising to me, and what is missing? First of all, it has been a very wonderful presentation for these ladies. One thing which has been surprising to me, straightforward, is how the ladies can really evolve from a small business to grow into huge businesses. Really very, very, very good observation for these ladies here. But again, I could see that how these ladies dare to really make sure that also they take the lead to really include other women and youth in their businesses, including sharing of knowledge, including having a concern on the health of the consumers. That was really very, very amazing to me. What I've missed, for the matter of time, what I missed from this presentation here is very small things, which is how now these ladies have been, apart from discussing about inclusion of other ladies and youth, how are they being able to include young men in those? I haven't anyone who has touched it, but when we talk youth, we are talking youth in terms of men and youth in terms of ladies. But just to wind up, before I hand over back to you, let me just highlight something which is concerning on sustainable livestock production. You have highlighted, Shell, here that we have more than 70% of youth, and we have, in the population, we have only 30% probably older people. If we don't have this youth engaged in livestock production, in future, we as old people will be malnourished. All the population, people will be malnourished. Livestock is very, very important because of the animal protein source, and we want to make sure that youth and women, they are really engaged in production, in livestock production. And the innovations that are being discussed here should be geared towards making sure they empower women and they empower young people to really take forward the innovations and the production of livestock going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Joachim. William, what about you? What did you hear, observe, some gaps? What do you think's working?
Thank you very much. So these are very exciting stories, especially from ladies, which then demonstrates to you the story of resilience for smallholder farmers. For me, it's extremely exciting that for each and every story we hear, there's a business model that works. So that's very central for the success of the smallholder farmer economy or ecosystem. So what is that business model that a given smallholder farmer needs to put into place to ensure that they can be successful and that they can be resilient? But also we hear a story of the need for integrating technology to bring about efficiencies in their business. When you hear the story about DigiCow, when you hear Elizabeth's story, you notice that technologies bring about efficiencies, and that then has an implication in terms of how the livestock food systems can be sustainable across the continent. Now, in terms of what could be the gaps, and they could not have been discussed here, but across the continent, we notice issues of market access across borders. So if you have resilient ladies like these ones who are on a daily basis, working so hard to ensure that they make ends meet, but their products cannot easily get access to the markets. So from a policy perspective, how do we then address issues of inter-country, inter-regional trade?
if goods cannot flow from Uganda to Kenya or Kenya to Tanzania, it's going to impact Elizabeth's business. It's going to impact the cow's business. So that's from a policy perspective, maybe that's the sort of things that we will need to discuss to ensure how can we enable the smallholder ecosystem thrive across the continent.
Thanks very much indeed. So a few points there, maybe somebody would like to pick them up. A lot of emphasis on practical training for young people, and I think several of our panel members mentioned that. There was a question about where are the young men? I'm not sure if anybody's qualified to answer that one, but welcome to try if you'd like to. You'd like to answer that, please.
The young men are within DigiCow, and I think I presented a 23-year-old young man by the name David. So they are there. They are well integrated. Okay.
That's great. That's great. What about this thing about technology for efficiency? Would anybody like to give another comment towards that? How do you see technology helping you with efficiency in the different businesses that you're undertaking? I don't know, maybe Elizabeth, that's something that's close to you, is it? Can you give a go?
I think technology is very important because as the company grows, we are facing a lot of challenges. For example, to manage a big number of smallholder farmers, to address their complaints, and the cost of training, transaction costs are very high on businesses. So a solution for this is to have a platform that works for a certain model. There are a lot of platforms out there. They're very expensive, and usually they are also charging on the side of the farmers, and farmers don't want to be charged from their income. So a platform to manage data and is very critical. But when we are also doing poultry production, for example, we are producing a lot of waste, chicken waste, and we need technology to manage that waste. At the moment, what ACAM Glitters is doing black flies production, and the remaining waste is going to manure. But as you heard her, she's saying there's no electricity. If we have a technology that will help poultry keepers probably produce biogas, I know feeders is a challenge, but we need those kind of technologies to better the production challenges.
Anybody else like to? You have a mic right there. Yeah.
Thank you, Sherry. Yeah, it's really, the issue of technology is really very paramount. And though you just asked me to just, pinpoint like one point that surprises me, but definitely there's many of them that has surprised me. Like two of the presenters here have indicated that how are they embedding climate smart practices in their businesses. Madam Munene, Madam Paulina, also they mentioned. So it's really critical. The issue of technology is critical, and when we really advance this, let's say, agenda on innovations, we need also to consider how are we really going to, to come up with some innovations in terms of technologies in production. We have had here like the technologies of biogas, planting trees. Those are some of the technologies that we have been advancing from the projects that we're implementing, but still I think we need to have a concerted effort from all angles, all practitioners, all stakeholders, which also will be, in a way, we have a concerted effort to address the issue of climate change. Should be part and parcel of every intervention in livestock production. Thank you.
Thank you. So we need more technologies, but we need technologies that are helping efficiency, but are also climate smart. That's no small order. I work for a research organization. I know we produce lots and lots of things, and Tallery here and Calro in Kenya and all the, lots of technologies around. So I think maybe we should talk a little bit about how knowledge moves, how people get access to that information. And Jemima, maybe that's where some of what you've been doing comes in.
How does knowledge move around? Simply by adopting to technology. For example, the Digital app, where we host trainings. What we do is we transform these trainings in a manner that now the farmer is able to better understand. Some of the information in brochures are very technical, that even when you read them, you wonder, as a dairy farmer, was this meant for my farm, yeah? So we simplify it for the farmers. We host it in the app. For a farmer with a smartphone, an Android-powered smartphone, they are able to access this knowledge at the comfort of their phones, wherever they are or whatever they are doing. For those that do not have the smartphone, we have customized information, how they get information. They get it now through the common interest groups, where the trainer has the app and trains them. They also get it through IVR, where they get pre-recorded audio sent out to them as phone calls. So we customize so that this farmer, regardless of the kind of phone that they have, they're able to get knowledge and information in a much easier way. Yeah.
Thank you. Margaret, what about you? How do you get the technologies, the newest things that are going to work?
Yeah, thank you. I spoke about training. So what we do is that we hold these trainings in farmers that are doing well. Farmers who already know about the particular technology we want to teach the others. For example, something like silage making. Many farmers don't know how to do it. So we go to a farmer who is doing it and we practically do it. And that way we are able to disseminate that kind of information to the others in a very real manner. Thank you.
I think HRF is one of the source of information on technology. So usually when I come to HRF, I collect a lot of papers. That's why I carry my bag and it goes home heavy with this information. Then then I read.
New technologies. Do you feel like you need some new things to help raise your chickens better?
Ndio maana taarifa zenyewe za kupata kwenye uzalishaji mpaka niende kwenye makundi au kwa sababu niko chini ya shirika ndo niweze kupata taarifa hizo. Lakini teknolojia ninayohitaji inaweza kanisaidia, labda miundombinu, labda ya umeme, naweza nikafanya vitu vingine kwa uhuru zaidi.
Yes, she said yes, she needs some technologies. So currently the information that she gets on technological advancement or other information, she gets them from the WhatsApp groups that they're in as young people and from the project because we are still supporting them. And still, given that she doesn't have electricity in the community, she would need some sort of power, maybe having, whether she'll use the solar or the biogas to light up in the community. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we've heard about technology, efficiency. We've heard some of the challenges around financing, about training, about market access, even about infrastructure. But we've also heard there's lots of opportunity and things can work. Let me now take a few minutes before we close to open this up. If anybody in the audience has a question or a comment that you'd like to bring at this point. Peter, one over here. Okay. One here, and then one here.
I would really also like to congratulate the sharing that we've had this evening, and it's so really wonderful. I had some concern or few comments, maybe to start with Pauline. How many DVDs do you have in your program? And how do you actually interact with the existing extension services in Kenya in those areas? And this goes also to Margaret. You mentioned that some few years back, the extension services in Kenya kind of is no longer there. I'm not very sure. Do you mean that nowadays in Kenya there is no extension staff? If they are there, I think there are opportunities where you can actually partner and work with to each other to facilitate what you are doing. And not only to facilitate, maybe to expand what you are doing. I think those are the opportunities which we are looking forward to seeing, that we work together with the private sectors to make sure that we reach where we want. Thank you.
So, are we missing something with extension?
Okay. To begin with, we have 115 Davids within the digital platform. And how we've been fortunate to work with the World Bank through the disruptive agricultural technology, where we are plugged into county governments. And through the county governments, now we have guidance of the extension people. They might not have facilitation to move from group A to group B to train the farmers, but they offer oversight, guidance to these Davids that we are working with. That's how we are integrating with the extension officers. Extension in Kenya is not non-existent. It is there, but of course there are gaps, and a lot can be done to enhance that. Yeah.
Thank you. I agree with Wanjiku. Extension services in Kenya, let me say that there are huge, huge gaps. But those gaps have been filled by the private sector. So we have a lot of people who do privately artificial insemination. We have private veterinary officers, but the government doesn't post extension officers and veterinary officers the way it used to do a long time ago when I started farming myself. A veterinary officer would come to my farm when I had issues and they would help sort out. That doesn't happen anymore, but this gap is being filled by the private sector, and therefore that is why the farmers need to be facilitated. Because like the AI services in the area that I am is given by private veterinary AI officers. Yeah, so, yeah, thank you.
So maybe this is also an opportunity for partnership that one of our panelists really emphasized, really helping each other. Where I'm strong, let me help where you're weak, and so on, so that we really need each other in this space. There's a lot of space for everybody, I think. There was another question somewhere? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thanks to the speakers as well. My name is Jean Mwenda. I work with SNV Development Organization in The Hague. I have a question. I didn't get your name, Elizabeth. Yeah, you shared your business model, which I think is very interesting. You have given an instance where you are providing seeds or preparing seeds that can then be taken to the rural areas for accessibility. Yet, we've heard from the young lady from Tanzania here that they are having issues in terms of, or rather challenges accessing some of the farm inputs, including the young chicks and feeds as well. My question is, how can we intentionally bridge the gap between what is happening significantly and interestingly in the urban areas with the rural areas, so that we can merge or bring, or rather bridge that gap, so that there's accessibility to information, to produce, and any other support services that might be needed, especially by the young agripreneurs. Thank you.
Is Paulina one of your clients, or? Exactly.
Thank you so much. I think I'm the private company, you know. Extension service is very expensive, and we need collaboration in that area. From 2017 to 2022 December, I fortunately had a fund for extension service from Melinda and Gates, and I managed to work all over Tanzania in so many villages, and we had reached 1.2 million smallholder farmers as one company. We also established 430 brooder units owned by women. Now, we train the women, the brooder women. They go to smallholder farmers. Now, structuring my model is a very integrated model that needs to be supported in terms of scalability, and that's where the opportunity is. Now, when we scale in collaboration with other partners, we can have partners who are solving probably treatment issues. We can concentrate on production and supply issues. Some other partners can join hands and do training issues. Now, when we have partners, including the government, for this year, our government and the new minister is interested in scalability. But our government will need a partner to fund the scalability in Tanzania to address issues like her issues. Because as a company, I cannot afford to meet everybody. But as government, we can scale up the model because it's a feasible model. We are working with ILRI, they have seen it, and it has a lot of opportunities to bring in more youth, more boys, more girls, even the people who did not go to school. We can even work with motorcycle drivers to be distributors. But we need to scale it in a scale that is huge and supported by government and funders as well. That's one. Secondly, when we scale it up and we distribute the distribution burden into different groups, we can end up producing probably a good number of, say, for example, eggs, maybe through contract farming. We can be solving issues of food security. For example, World Food Program is looking for food in Somalia at the moment. In Sudan, World Food Program is looking for food to support the women who are eating weeds from lakes. But we have farmers here. The farmers need support from the government, from the strategies, from policy, but also from investors. So the opportunities are there, but how do we collaborate? How do we register the visions of my fellow women and turn them into reality? So it's a challenge to everybody to look at these visions and invest in these visions and make it a true, maybe, result. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Elizabeth. So a real case for investing to make a difference. And that's one of the things that we're aiming to raise at this discussion, through this discussion, is the need for investment to help make these things work. They can work at these various scales that we've heard at, but we really need more investment and more partnership, collaboration across different pieces of the puzzle, whether research or extension or private sector, government, development agencies. We need them all to work together. We've all got to play our part here, I think, and it's really coming out quite strongly in this discussion. Another question, yes.
Great, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Nono Sekgoto. I'm from South Africa, and I am a cattle production farmer. And I've been in this business for 12 years now. And what's interesting is I've really appreciated just hearing all the various levels and scale of the ladies and how it is they are actually solving their challenges to keep going. But I think the one thing I would really like to share, and it's for everybody in here so that we can all think about it, how do we really help women to access finance? It's an issue we know, but let me give you a scenario of me. Working 12 years in agri with finance background of about 7 years. So obviously I arrived in this business as a financier. And of course, accessing finance being an issue, after having maybe 5 years learned working with my father, my business partner and I, who's a woman as well, she is strong in production and I am finance. We create a business of cattle, so we now have our own business, but we realize we can't access finance. So we think, what else can I do? I go back to my skills as I used to be a wealth manager. I invite private investors to come and actually invest in our business because no banks, no institutions are interested in financing young ladies, even with knowledge and experience. So long story short, 8 years later, I then convince my clients then to be partners with me so that we can build a business that will be strong in business sense because they are business people and they sit on my board. And on top of that, building governance in a way that it's going to be a real business. Now, I'm confident banks are going to look at me different. I've got men on my board, but we're led by the two of us, young women who actually are leading the business. It's been 2 years since we've been in the business. We're still struggling to raise capital. So I'm not sure. It's an interesting challenge. The fact that you can have experience, you can have a team, you can have access to land. We actually farm on 2,000 hectares of land. So I'm trying to build an actual commercial farm, not a small scale, not little. So how do we, that's something that I would really love to know. How do we get, just like the gentleman mentioned, how do we scale? How do we get big businesses? And so for me, that's my challenge as a young person who's interested in agriculture, who's shown commitment, and I've got results, but yet I'm still struggling. So it would be great to hear from anyone with that.
Thank you. Fantastic intervention there and a challenge too. Do we have any of the people with the finance in the room who might be interested? I'm suspecting not. We tend to a little bit talk to each other, but it seems to me that we're getting some must-haves. We're getting a must-have about technologies that are efficient, that are climate smart, a must-have about those knowledge of those traveling, a must-have about partnership and collaboration, and a must-have about financing. Michael Victor, you have the answer for us, please?
No, I'm not a finance person, as you know. But, but I do have another question, if that's all right. So Michael Victor from International Livestock Research Institute. With a lot of the work that we're doing with Elizabeth, one of the things that we're finding out is the issue of gender norms and how do you break some of the gender norms? If women are making more money than their husband or how are they being perceived by the community? Youth, how do you get youth involved when maybe no one really wants to get involved in farming as a youth? So how do you kind of change those and deal with those gender norms? And with Elizabeth, we've been using a lot of social media and doing a lot of different things. But it'd be interesting to hear from you and others about how you deal with these, addressing the social norms.
So how to do things differently so women and youth really have opportunities. Who wants to comment on that? Yeah?
Okay, I don't want to answer your question, but I just want to answer her and actually agree with her. More than 25 years ago when we were starting our company, I was in the same situation that you're in. I had a good proposal. I had even saved a bit of money, but I couldn't get anybody to fund me. I went to all the banks in Kenya, and nobody wanted to give me money. I suppose they looked at me. I was a woman. I was young, and maybe they were wondering, But around that time, the European Investment Bank came up with something and wanted to fund SMEs in Kenya. And a friend of ours told us, go and approach Kenya Commercial Bank because they have this money from the European Investment Bank. And therefore we went there, and that is how we got our loan to start our business, which was very, very friendly. We got a whole year grace period. The interest was really good. So if we can get those kind of partnerships, like the European Investment Bank or any kind of a bank like that, which will help SMEs. I don't know if you fall in that group of an SME. And I think it can help. At least that is how we started our business. Thank you.
So I hope we've also told the EU what a difference they make, the investment bank, because we want to encourage them to do more things like that so that people like our cattle farmer can benefit. You wanted to comment on this too?
On the financing, to be frank, there are so many issues, especially with us women. I've been trying to understand exactly why we do not easily get access to finance. I've been into business now over 15 years. I only accessed loans twice. One thing that I'm using my own experience for sharing, it's very critical to understand the language of investors. That's one. We do not know exactly what investors want. We do not know their processes. We do not have proper records and proper data. That's what makes women fail. I'm saying from my perspective. The other thing that livestock in general lacks funding, it's because of the risk. The financiers look at livestock, especially poultry. They look at mortality risks rather than seeing how to manage the risk by probably adding insurances. But also, when you're talking about insurance, it's also very expensive because you have to insure each and every chickens, which also is supposed to be supported by a lot of compliance, and compliance also is very expensive. Now, for us women to access funds, we have to, in our businesses as they grow, we have to think of at least 1 to 3 years to work on compliances and make sure that everything is neat and clean, the papers are clean, the compounds, the production units, everything aligns to environmental and social policies. That means when they come, we've done the, they call it a feasibility study, we've certified environment, and with the proper certification. That's how we can easily access funds. To answer your question on gender, I know I'm working with you on gender, and one thing that our company does is to mentor. Mentoring is not easy. It takes your energy and it takes your time. For the incubation center that I have just completed a big pilot that has been praised by everybody. I, as the managing director, I had 3 hours on a daily basis to speak to 3 young people, listen to them, understand what they feel, what they think, what they perceive. And once you listen to them, they will open up to you and tell you the inner worries, and you address the worries by training. So being there for them, when you are working with them, you change their mindset. The last group that I had, we had drug addicts, but at the moment, they, I just relocated them from their region to our production units, and I'm not there. They're responsible. Mortality rate for chickens is 0.3. So you can change minds, but if you commit and understand the youth you're working with, understand the women you're working with, Now, you have to actually change the mindset of boys and change the mindset of girls and bring them together. Then they work together under leadership that you have led them to work through a certain way and not through a certain way. Thank you.
You want to say?
Asante. Kwa swala la jinsia, hata katika jamii yetu kiasi fulani inaenda kuisha kwa kuwa tunaongea na mtu mmoja mmoja au wawili au kikundi kuwashawishi ili waondokane na zile mila za mwanamke kutokufanya kazi ya kumuingizia kipato. Wengine wapo wanatamani, lakini unakuta waume zao ndo wameshikilia hivyo. Lakini pamoja na hivyo, mtu ambaye kama ana hamasa ya kufanya kitu, yule ndiye anayebadilika. Kwa kiwango fulani, ile issue ya gender imepungua. Wanafanya kazi, maanake wanaona maendeleo wanayofanya kwa mshikamano. Mwanaume akifanya hiki na mwanamke akifanya hiki, kuna kitu ambacho kinafanyika cha tofauti na kufanya mtu mmoja.
Briefly, what she said is that based on the gender issues, as per the question, they're doing the one-to-one coaching with the young women in their communities, or they do it in twos if there are two women, or in groups, because they are operating in groups as well in their own communities. So, and where there are difficulties, they also talk to their spouse, the female spouse who are a little bit reluctant in supporting their female and encouraging them to work together. And when they realize the benefit, then they offer more support to their ladies and they do it better. And that also becomes an inspiration to the rest of the community members to work together with their spouse. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're gonna, one last question.
Thank you
and
so
then we're
much.
gonna wind up. Let me warn my panel members and guest panelists. I'm gonna ask you for 2 words of the action you think is really important. 2 words, not a sentence, 2 words. Last
Perfect.
one,
I will
please.
make this quick. My name is Neha Kukreja. I'm from McKinsey & Company, also with AATI, working with the government in Dodoma on the agricultural transformation plan for 2050. So my question is a little bit of a pivot. And in terms of trying to understand at the highest level, what are the national priorities for livestock? I'm curious as to why there's been no discussion around beef cattle raising, and if that's intentional, or if that was just coincidental, or if there's more of a shift away from a sustainability standpoint, or if we think it's not as gender inclusive. But would just love to understand in terms of prioritizing value chains, why today the focus has been on dairy and poultry.
It was admittedly random.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, so we've had a lot of rich discussion. I hope we've heard those takeaway messages that seem to be coming through. But I'm going to give each panel member 2 words. What do you think are the actions that would really make the biggest impact in bringing together these 3 ingredients, livestock, women, youth, to make a difference to food system transformation? 2 words.
Technology, access to finance,
Okay. You see, Shelly, 2 words is very difficult, but let me try. Embed innovations on technologies. That is 3 words, but I'm sorry.
Near enough. You can say 2 in Swahili, but
Ningependa kuboresha mazingira wezeshi ya vijana wafugaji.
Creating a neighboring environment.
collaboration and recording the visions.
Nice. I hope somebody's recording all this.
Empowering women to own livestock.
Fantastic. I like it.
Technology and policies. Yeah.
Great. Please join me in thanking the panel. I really hope with these fantastic examples and the great discussion and points that have been raised, that you are convinced, if you weren't already, that there is a role for sustainable livestock in transforming food systems, and that bringing women and young people into that equation is really essential to make sure it happens. I want to say a big thank you to the speakers, the panel members. Thanks to the organizers. I know they're in the room here too. Thanks to all of you for coming along. Thanks for interpreting, and thanks for the technology support. Enjoy the rest of the week. Thank you.